We have many registrations for this session, so thank you all for your interest, for signing up and tuning in today. It's really important. Let me just remind you that this is a World LPG Association meeting and is therefore governed by the World LPGA statutes, specifically our antitrust guidelines, which prohibits the discussion of commercially sensitive information, such as pricing, volumes, market share, etc. Gender balance in the LPG industry is not optimized, and the World LPG Association is in a unique position to start to make a change happen. This change has been driven by WinLPG. WinLPG is a global network that will recommend actions and activities as part of the World LPG Association's strategic planning process to address this issue. We will have a Q&A session in the end, so feel free to submit your questions on the chat, on the Q&A boxes. We will be picking up those questions as we go along. And as I mentioned, today our session is going to be focused on women in LPG. We have a great agenda, and again, thank you very much for joining us today. To kick off our session, I am very pleased to welcome Alison Abbott, Communication Director of the World LPG Association. Welcome, Alison, and thank you so much for joining us today and for kicking off our session.
Thank you, Andre, and a very, very warm welcome to this nearly 200 people who've signed up for this webinar. Just wanted to give you a quick update. Women in LPG, as I think many of you know, I am honoured to manage this with the support of Nikki, who you'll hear from later. We've had a thrilling start to this year so far. The highlight, I think, is that we launched our latest chapter in Brazil. So huge hello to anybody who's dialing in from Brazil. Please support Gloria in all the work that she's going to be doing. And we're planning another chapter later this year, which will take it to 10 national chapters. I also really want to personally congratulate our US chapter, Women in Propane. I was in Nashville along with a few people on the webinar 2 weeks ago, and they celebrated 10 years of existence, and we had a super week of celebrations. It was absolutely fantastic. What I also wanted to say that later this year we will be in India for LPG Week. It's going to be in November. We're going to hold a really big meeting there, and please put that in your diary as well. I think the overwhelming thing is that it's fantastic that these webinars are great, but we're starting to be able to travel a little bit more, and it's lovely to see people face to face without masks. But you do have to worry about what you're wearing underneath on your bottom half in these real live meetings. So today we've got a fantastic webinar for you. You'll hear a welcome from our VIPs, including the keynote from our Woman of the Year, Tamriel Zettucci. Then we've got a panel with some new faces for you, and we'll also have a focus session from our Global Community Manager, Nikki. What I'd like to do first is introduce our two VIPs. I'm going to introduce Blaise Edger from Oryx Energies. Blaise is really important to us. We really appreciate all the support you give us. Blaise is the goal chair of the Business Improvement Goal, and under which Women in LPG falls, and he supports us completely. I'd like Blaise to say a few words, and then Blaise is going to hand over to Paula Frigerio from Abbott in Chile, and Paula is in the 3rd year as our global chair. So please, Blaise, the floor is yours, and then if you would pass over to Paula, that would be fantastic, and then Paula, back to me. Thank you very much. Blaise.
Thank you, Alison. It is always an honor for me to say a few words in introduction to Win LPG webinars. Thank you to each of you for participating in this webinar, and many thanks in advance to the panel for the discussion that will follow. As usual, an interesting and important topic will be discussed, and today it's about leadership. If I may, I would like to quote Warren G. Bennis, who said, leaders are people who do the right thing. Managers are people who do things right. You certainly agree with me that Win LPG is made up of women who are great leaders. They are great leaders because they are doing what it takes to attract more women and young people into the LPG industry for a sustainable and a bright future. The world is changing with the challenge of climate change. It is important that the industry counts on many women and young people to positively impact this change by positioning the industry on the right side of this equation. Thanks again, and I'm sure that we will all help make this happen. Now I would like to hand over to Paula. Paula, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Blaise. First of all, I would like to welcome everyone. We are happy to have a big audience today. As in the last few years, we have been focusing, especially during the pandemic, on strengthening and growing our national chapters. As Alison said, we are very, very happy to have our newest chapter launched this year in Rio, and we expect to continue to grow. Today's topic is very interesting. It's leadership. Leadership for me is having a clear path on what you want to do. It's also helping others grow professionally and guiding them in this path, and also having the courage sometimes to make tough decisions. As Blaise was saying, the right decision, even if it's the tough one. So with this, I think this will be a very interesting seminar, and thank you all for being here, and back to Alison.
Thanks, Blaise. Thanks, Paula. Good insights into leadership there. Before we move on, I want to know where everybody is coming from. So we're going to launch a poll, and please answer. It basically says, which part of the world are you joining from? This is always an interesting one. So I will give you a couple of minutes. As you can see, we've split Asia, Oceania, Africa, Europe, Middle East, North America, Latin America. So let's see where everyone is from. I'll be surprised if there's a lot from Oceania because of the time, but let's see. We'll just give it a couple more seconds so that everyone can vote. We can't vote, so we're just depending on you, our panelists. Okay, fantastic. Let's close the panel there. And let's see. Okay, very interesting. So 40% are from North America. They are, congratulations on your 10th anniversary. Closely followed, 28% Europe, Africa, Asia, and there are people, good evening to everybody in Oceania and Latin America. That's super, that's great. Nobody from the Middle East. I think we don't have a lot of members in the Middle East. I think that's something maybe that will give us a little food for thought. So I'm thrilled now to introduce our keynote speaker. Tamriel Zettucci is with Gas. She's the COO and does an amazing role there. She's also Woman of the Year. And I'm going to hand over to Tamriel for your comments. Tamriel, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alison, and really the entire WinLPG team for creating these opportunities to learn. One thing that I know about leaders is they look for a way to learn every day. And today we're going to be able to learn from each other because of this great opportunity. Thank you to everyone who has signed in, because you're giving us the gift of your valuable time, the most valuable gift that you can give to anybody. And I know that we have Youth Council who have joined us today. Thank you for infusing your energy. And my own team that's here today, I'm here because of you. Alison asked me to share a little bit about my career and my background, and I thought about, well, how to do that in 10 minutes of time, because there's a lot that goes on in anyone's career journey. But I went back to what I know, and that is I learn about people best by when they tell me how they make decisions, the decisions that really shaped their career and how they came to make those decisions. So that's how I'm going to start. And the first thing for me is people, right? And Blaise and Paula both spoke about the need for people. And so I have had all along my career journey the fingerprints of people who I trusted. These are my family, my coworkers, and mentors, which is another theme for today. And to be able to have the privilege of helping people, but more importantly, to learn from people and have them help me. So as you listen to me today, you are going to learn about the people who are in my life and how they have impacted. So if you think about your own career journey, just for a minute, envision what might that look like if it needed to be a symbol? How do you see it? Is it a long path, maybe that's got lots of beautiful flowers and trees along the way? Like, what does that look like? Well, I developed my vision very early on in life, so you'll have to forgive me for its elementary. It's just a ladder, right? And my first mentor helped me to develop what that ladder could be. And so if you want to picture my career journey, it is a ladder that the steps on the ladder, that's my education, my STEM undergraduate in computer science, my master's in business administration, and then now my pursuit of a PhD in organizational performance and change management. And then in between those steps are the space that is the wonderful opportunities of my life and my career that were made possible because of those steps that I made on that educational ladder. So think about that for yourself. But as you're listening to me, you can kind of picture this ladder. I want to talk a little bit about leadership because it is the theme for today, and it'll help you with some of the decisions that I want to share with you that were a large part of my life. So my team that's on today will tell you that I share this definition of leadership often, and that's, leaders, they know something. Leaders, they know how to do something. And early on in life, that's sort of what we think leaders are. And then we learn that leaders also have personal courage, which Blaise spoke about, and they have emotional maturity, and they also know when to be followers. So one of the first decisions that I made in my life had a lot to do with personal courage. And that is, I wanted to find a way to have work-life balance, but I didn't want to give up on my pursuit of my overall career goals. And so rather than waiting for the situation to conform, I made a change in where I started my own company. So I left the corporate world and I moved into my own company, which allowed me to have hours and work-life balance. And it was scary. It was, difficult to leave the stability and to move into the unknown. But here again, people made the difference. The relationships that I built along the way, some became my customers, some became my employees. And together we built a software company that led me to Ferrari Gas, which was really the next major decision. And that was to sell my company and to move into an environment where I could begin to grow in a different way. And that, for me, emotional maturity came into play in that. At Ferrari Gas, within 5 to 7 years, I hit what is a ceiling, and maybe we've all been there, where that the next step up isn't going to happen for a while. And I made the decision to stay. So when you make those types of decisions, you have to find a new way to get what it is that you need. So I found a way to find new learning opportunities in other areas of the company. And I had a love for operations. So here I am, this technical person that has a technology management position, but I really wanted to understand operations and move into operations. So I used my vacation days, I used external volunteer opportunities, I asked question after question after question, and I gave myself internal promotions, I called it. So my title never changed, but I internally promoted myself into the district manager position or a logistics manager position, and I learned everything that I could. And along the way, while my title may not have changed from a technology manager, my breadth and experience changed. And for those that work with me, they know that I don't necessarily have any fixation on title at all. And I know I learned that through all those years where I was broadening my experience within my own company and within the opportunities outside. The last decision that I'll talk about in this short period of time is the one that I think has led me to the position that I'm in today as the Chief Operating Officer. Several years ago, it's no secret, Ferrellgas was in a position where they needed some help, right? We had a capital structure that needed help, and our company, it needed a little help getting itself kind of back on track. And the second influential mentor in my life, Jim Farrell, understood that I could not be just labeled as a technology leader, that I was not just a CIO, but I was an operator. And so he had the personal courage to take a chance on a woman, on a technology leader, to place her in a position to run, one of the largest propane companies in the United States. And so that, for me, was the first opportunity for me to understand leadership and followership in a partnership. As we've gone through the restructuring of our capital structure and the transformation of the company, in some cases, I followed, and in other cases, I led. And knowing when to do both really helped me through areas that I had never encountered before, like speaking to people on Wall Street and asking them to invest in us, like being able to move the mindset of our company from not just the mover of propane, but a logistics company that's technology enabled. I'm very proud that almost half of my leadership team are women. And that's something that transforms Ferrellgas in total and has been there for a long time. And that, again, is a credit to my mentor, Jim Farrell. So the decision-making in my life is based on the support of people. It really follows a path of my education. My PhD in organizational change management definitely helps with the transformation of the company, but recognizing the power of the people that I work with and empowering them to be leaders, that was really the catalyst for our transformation. I might be named the Woman of the Year, but it's everybody within our industry that's so supportive of one another. It's the people within my company, and it's my mentor that have really led me to this point. If there's one thing that I can leave you with in terms of advice for you to think about, it's that we are never any one thing. We are so many things. We are our interests, our hobbies, our family, our career choices, and our education choices. And find a way to weave all that together to make that space between the steps of your ladder rich and exciting. And I hope that you'll reach out to me. You see my email address. And if you have questions or you want to learn more about me, I'm happy to do that. I'd like to thank WinLPG for inviting me to share a little bit today, to learn from the panelists. I'd like to really thank this industry who has shown leadership in a way that I think we all agree is second to none, especially over the last 2 years. And I hope that you all are active and engaging today, and I appreciate this time. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tamriel. I think we're all giving you a virtual bravo there. You said to him, I was making notes, she's very gracious and kind, and what an impressive presentation. And there's a reason why you're our Woman of the Year. That's all I can say. We know Jim Farrell, and I think we have to thank people like Jim, people like Blaise, because without your leadership and your support, we need men in this network as well. So it's so important. I love the image of your career path as a symbol and your ladder. You're so structured. I admire that. My symbol would be like somebody had dropped a plate of spaghetti, I think, and it was all blah, 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 blah. So I need to get that ladder going. But thanks, Tamriel. And you'll be all thrilled to know that Tamriel is going to join us on the panel. So we'll hear more from Tamriel. Speaking of the panel, before we move into our panel discussion, we're going to just hold one more poll. We don't have a lot of polls. This is the last poll, but we're talking today largely about leadership and mentoring. So we have a poll question about mentoring. And Eva, please, thank you. What we want to do is, we're curious to see, we hear a lot about mentoring, but are you a mentor? Are you being mentored? You've been mentored, you're interested in becoming a mentor or being mentored, or you're not currently being mentored. Because what we'll be interested, if you are interested in becoming a mentor or being mentored, that's something that we'll get the results we can pick up. So please vote. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. I think one thing that Win LPG wants to do in the longer term is have some kind of mentoring process, and Nikki and I have discussed this at length, something probably that the national chapters will ask them to pick up, but because I think that it's something that we all need. So thank you for answering that. I think we'll just give it a couple more seconds and let's launch the results, please. Okay, interesting. Nearly everybody is either in some kind of mentorship program. So currently a mentor, 39%. I assume you can see this, or being mentored, so that's kind of equal, or have been mentored. And then there's a handful of people who are interested in being a mentor or being mentored. What I suggest, you can see my email on the screen here. If you are interested in becoming a mentor or being mentored, get in touch with me and we will see what we can do to put you in touch with people. It's not something that Win LPG does directly, but I think it's so important that it's something that we could perhaps have a look at doing. So thank you for that. Next, we're going to go on to our panel discussion. We've got a fantastic panel lined up. Tamriel is back. And you've heard from here. We have Kanu Singh from Indian Oil Corporation in India, who's also a youth council member. We will talk a little bit about the synergies between the youth council and women in LPG. We have Morgan Williams from ANOVA, who is also very active on the youth council, which is why I wanted her to be part of this. And then last but certainly not least, we have Mike Ferrari. We talked about the importance of having gentlemen here. Mike is from Suburban Propane based in Florida, but he's also co-chair of the Youth Council, and I know he has words of wisdom. So what I'm going to do to manage this, we've got about 20 minutes here, so plenty of time for some discussion. Please, people in the audience, feel free to punch in questions in the Q&A section, but I've got 3 questions first. I'm going to go randomly around our panelists and ask you to give us your kind of story. So the first thing is that we've mentioned leadership, and Blair said leaders do things right, and Paola said that leaders make not always easy decisions. But I'd like to hear from each of the 4 of you. What examples have you seen of great leadership? Is there one story that you can very sort of briefly tell us in a nutshell? And let's start with Morgan.
Yeah, so I have been very fortunate thus far in my career to have shared my team with some really great leaders. And the first leader that comes to mind when you ask that question, Alison, is a woman who kind of took me under her wings whenever I first graduated college. And thinking about this question, I'd say what made her such a great leader in my mind, and that stood out to me, was her ability to build a team centered around trust. She did this in many ways, but I think most importantly, she was approachable. She had an open door policy. I could approach her, ask her any questions that I needed, and she could come to me. She was just very easily reached, and also she was also an active listener. I think that's something that's maybe not talked a lot about whenever it comes to leadership. So often when we're in environments and having dialogue with people, you kind of get the sense that people are just waiting for you to finish your thought before they respond with whatever they want to respond, not necessarily hearing you. But she built that team around trust. So I knew that if I went to her, she was going to hear me. If she came to me, we were all going to hear her. And then she also didn't like sugarcoat things either. She was very straightforward, which I also truly appreciate. I think that's definitely a way to build trustworthiness within the team. So when you ask that question, Alison, that's what comes to mind would be her. Her name was Kelly, and she was a great leader, great mentor.
Thank you.
Around
trust and listening. Great. I hope that everyone in the audience is going to get some takeaways on how to build your leadership a ladder, the leadership ladder. I like that. Right. Okay. Kanu in India. Let's hear from you and, leadership stories.
I had somewhat of a similar experience, what Morgan just said about. I was fortunate enough to work under someone who made sure that the team is about trust and reliability on each other. And I saw him in action during our monthly sales reviews. We used to have these sales reviews that were brutal on sales team. But when this new person came up, he just took reins of our entire team. He used to do one thing. Whenever we enter the room, he would sit on the side of the sales team, not with the reviewers. So it kind of gave us a sense of belonging that, this person is with us. And the second thing he showed continuously was if there was an achievement, if there was something that was done good that one, he would make sure that the team gets credit and he would highlight the person who's the key contributor from the team. But if there was a failure, if there's something that went wrong, he would take the entire responsibility squarely on his shoulder. He would never name anyone who was responsible for that fumble or anything. So what happened? We saw him in action. We saw him doing this in and out. And he never questioned us afterwards, or he never reprimanded us that, I had to do this because of you guys. It took us like 2-3 months, but that instilled such a fierce responsibility to ensure that we will not let that person down. Mm-hmm. And it came to the point that he never had to remind us about deadlines or an added responsibility. We just had this collective sentiment that we had to work because we can't let this person down who's standing up for us. So I think that happened because he took time to build trust and he made sure that he can be relied on. So this was one thing I saw early in my career, and I try to replicate this as much as I can whenever I get an opportunity.
Thanks, Kanu. That sounds like a very special kind of leader, kind as well, gracious. Mike, Mr. Ferrari, how about you? Do you have a leadership story?
Thank you, Alison, and welcome everyone to the webinar. Thank you for joining. I would say for me, leadership is really based around two main qualities that I've seen in people that I've worked with. The first being great leaders are great storytellers. Everybody could picture Tamriel's ladder when she was talking about, her story and her success. And great leaders are able to really tell a story. And that ties into what Kanu was saying about leading by inspiration. I relate to that in a lot of ways because I think of myself as a great storyteller. And I feel like you really get inspired by people that you work with when they are able to paint a clear picture of, where the team is going and connect in that way. So for me, I love a good storyteller. I love someone that can really create a picture in your mind and almost make you feel connected to their story. The other thing I think is a really important leadership quality is transparency. I try to do this with my team. I try to be very open and honest about where we're going. So many people struggle with, gosh, I can't get my team to all row in the same direction in the boat. I can't get them to, everybody to join my mission. I'm going to let everyone on this call in on a little secret. If you want your team to focus on your mission, you have to tell them your mission. You have to be transparent about what you are looking to do. And you have to be open and honest and vulnerable with your team and say, look, this is what we want to accomplish. And this is what I need from the people around me to be successful. Great leaders don't have all the answers. And connecting to the youth council in that way, I'm the co-chair, but I am surrounded by the most talented people around the globe. We represent every single time zone. We have people all over the world, and I am extremely blessed to be a part of that team. the leaders don't have all the answers. They just surround themselves with the people that have all the answers. And I am very lucky in that way that, whether it's at work or whether it's with the youth council, we have a team that has all of the strengths that I don't have, and that support and enhance the way that I lead. So leaders are great storytellers. They lead by inspiration. They're transparent with their team and their people, and they build a team around them that complement the things that they need as an individual. So the best leaders I've ever worked with, those are the characteristics they had. And one final note I would make is I have always been the type that works in spite of things. So I don't put myself in a position where I feel victimized by a situation. You work for someone who isn't a good leader, and we've all had that situation. You really have to take the mindset of working in spite of those things. So take the best leader you've ever had, and then take the worst leader you've ever had, and think about the qualities that both of those people embody. And the worst leader you've ever worked for, work in spite of those things. Take those things that you wish that person had and focus on being that for your team. So that would be my 2 cents on that.
Thanks, Mike. And finally, Tamriel, on this question. Actually, I'm going to change it for you because we've had a question come in from Jenny Norton. And I think that as we're asking for leadership stories, but Jenny asks, what's been your biggest challenge as a leader? So Tamriel, I think that probably is a great question for you.
And I think you kind of hit it on the head when you talked about structure. I'm a very structured person, very evidence-based. And so my first manager was also my first mentor, and he taught me how to take positive risk. So for someone who is very structured and very evidence-based, sometimes taking risk is hard. So taking positive risk and putting the hope and the trust in your people, letting go. That's sometimes the most difficult thing that a leader can really encounter. And so for me, letting go, trusting, and really just taking big positive risk when it makes sense. Those are key. Those are probably the most challenging. I think Blaise kind of hit on it. That ties back to those tough decisions.
Yeah, and the thing that's coming over again and again is trust. Now I want to change the subject a little bit. It kind of weaves in well, but we're really thrilled to have 3 members of the Youth Council. We did that on purpose because one of the things that came out of our WLPGA's more strategic review and other questionnaires that we've asked is, how can the Youth Council work more closely with women in LPG? Now, they do different things, but I'd like each of our 4 panelists just to give me your very high-level overview on how you think. Give me like just top 2 things, because otherwise we'll run out of time, that either the Youth Councils can do or women in LPG can do to help us work closely together. So I'm going to start this time. I will start with Kanu. So top 2 things that you'd like to see happen.
I think the entire concept of women in LPG was to see more women in leadership positions so that you have people to look up to. And this thing is happening with Youth Council. So once you're Youth Council, I'm getting connected with a lot of other people. And in turn, I have been able to pass on this information or the wisdom or whatever I get collected from talking with various people to my colleagues, to the women who I associated with within my industry. And this has created a thing which they look up to, being able to interact with world leaders in this industry. So I think Youth Council is already on the right path. We just need to fast track this kind of a communication and loop in more people into this so that it reaches to more people.
That's fantastic. Thank you. I know that you're a new entrant into the Youth Council, in fact, so congratulations on that. And by the way, just for anybody on the call, the Youth Council is a closed group, because I do get people asking to join. The Youth Council is just for representatives from the WLPGA Industry Council. So I'll just make that clear that it is a closed group. Tamriel, Feral Gas is very active on the Youth Council, and I know that you're part of the working committee. So do you have, are there a couple of things that you would like to see happen, that ideas that we could do?
In our own company, one of the ways that we learn best is by shadowing or spending time with someone that's doing something that's of interest or that's, necessary to learn or grow or create a better process. So it would be wonderful to be able to connect youth from the Youth Council to other leaders. I mean, think how fantastic it would be to shadow Blaze for the day, or, to spend some time with Paula. So, I think that if we are getting back into travel and we are going to be moving around the world, to be able to connect in a networking way. So that's one thing that I think WinLPG could help the Youth Council with. And then, I do agree with Kanu. I think that communication, just more touches, more ways that we can interact with one another. And sometimes structure will help with that versus letting it happen organically. So, I think something around that would also be very helpful.
Thank you. Shadowing, great idea. Really like that. I'm making lots of notes here. I'm going to move on to Morgan. What would you like to see happen?
Yeah, so I think the Youth Council is a really interesting organization because half of the members are women, because we have one male, one female from each of the companies that participate. And I was on the same line, thinking along the same line as Tamriel, in that I think either a shadow kind of program with the WinLPG and putting our women and our youth and our men, our youth in communication with other leaders in this industry, I think is definitely the way that we should move forward, whether that be a shadow program or if we decide to form sort of a mentorship program. I think that's definitely something that we should look into doing.
That's fantastic. Nikki and I will talk about shadowing. I really like that idea. And last but not least, Mike, you've been in the Youth Council since it was created only 1 year ago, I might add. You did a sterling job as the sort of the leader, if you like. So I think you're best placed to perhaps answer this question. So what would you like to see?
Well, for WinLPG, it's very similar to the Youth Council from a motivation perspective. So the WinLPG, for people that are not familiar, they have 4 main pillars: support and retain, promotion and advocacy, educate and attract, and encourage and develop. And the Youth Council was created primarily to drive new talent into our business, to combat the fact that we have an aging workforce that is leaving and taking a ton of industry knowledge and experience. So for me, what I would like to see happen is I would like to see a more targeted, maybe campaign on driving new talent into our business, whether it be younger or women or whatever that looks like. I know that Alison, you and Nikki work very hard in, spreading the word about WinLPG. And, we as a Youth Council are really trying to create a buzz and presence in the industry. And I would love to have a more targeted partnership where we maybe do something together to drive new people in the business and celebrate the diversity and inclusion that can be part of our industry. Because the fact is, people don't really know or understand our business. And, I'm hoping that we have attendees today that are not necessarily in our industry, but are interested in learning about it or learning about how, we are making moves and really trying to create a culture of inclusion. And I think some just targeted focus around that as a team would be excellent.
Thanks. Thank you, Mike. We've got 5 minutes left in this session before we move on. I'm going to ask a rapid fire speedy question for you all just to close with. The question is, bearing in mind that there's 3 on here who are really super young, but what quick advice would you give to your younger self? What little pearl gem of wisdom would you advise yourself if you were starting your career tomorrow? And I'm going to start with Morgan.
Sure. I think I'd tell myself to not overthink. I think I'm definitely an overthinker, and that hindered me whenever I was first starting out. Instead of just diving headfirst into opportunities, I sit and I ponder and I think about it to the point where maybe that opportunity would kind of leave me by. So just don't overthink.
Don't overthink. Tamriel, what advice would you give yourself?
There's so much advice that I would love to go back and give my younger self. But I think, forgiveness, forgive myself for not always doing everything, for not getting everything right. And then being, very transparent about my failures, because I think that helps other leaders be better leaders. So that quick answer.
And just so that's interesting. Do you think that women are harder on themselves, Tamriel? Give them, feel more guilty?
Well, I can only use the pool of people I surround myself with, and I will tell you absolutely, absolutely, from the people that we are definitely harder on ourselves.
Yeah, it's interesting. Kanu, what advice would you give the younger Kanu?
If I can go back, on a career front, I would probably tell myself to get enrolled into different courses to enhance my skill set as soon as possible. Probably they might be related to the field that I'm working right now, or for a field that I aspire to be in. But I would tell myself to take on that role much earlier in whatever time I have scheduled for it. And yes, I would get enrolled into different courses which are available if I go back 11 years. Yes.
That's great advice. And Mike, what advice would you give to little Mike?
I would say trust your gut. I've always been a great judge of character, and I feel like I can read people really well, and it's served me very well in my career. So I would say trust your gut and stay away from the frosted tips on your hair as a younger self. Don't do that again.
And thank you. So I've got one more question. We have 2 minutes, and I think this is again one for Tamriel. It's come in. And I think it could be very interesting from Sarah King. In fact, I can't see the rest of the name. I'm sorry, Sarah. But from your perspective as I think the leader on this panel, what are the best ways that leaders can support other leaders? That's an interesting aspect. Do you have a quick response, Tamriel?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think it kind of ties back to the last question. For me, it's sharing failure, vulnerability, so that you can learn from others' mistakes, but also time, giving real quality time and support to other leaders and wanting them to succeed, and showing them that by giving your time to them.
For sure. I 100% agree with that. I would say steel sharpens steel. Like we got to motivate each other and surround yourself with people that are trying to get better. So if you want to support another leader, if you're a leader and you want to get better at your job, find someone that you're inspired by and try and emulate them, and surround yourself, make your circle a group of people that make you want to be better at what you do.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I remember hundreds of years ago when I sort of started out and somebody gave me a piece of advice, was that I guess it's a bit like the shadowing, was find someone within your company who you admire and watch what they do and kind of follow them. And I did do that, and I think I learned a lot from somebody really right at the very beginning. So I think that's good advice. So hopefully everyone, you've picked up something that tomorrow you'll go and put into place on your own leadership path. We've heard a lot about, thank you to the panel, excellent stuff. We've heard a lot about good people and great leaders, and how we're also lucky to be surrounded by this incredible talent pool. But what if, imagine this, you have to deal with difficult people or challenging people. How do we do that? How do we do that whilst maintaining our own professionalism? And I'm going to call on Nikki to give us some insights into this. For anybody who doesn't know Nikki, she's going to explain what she does. But we would not have Win LPG where we are today without Nikki. That much I can tell you. So please, Nikki, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Listening to the panel discussion, when I first entered the LPG industry in 1993, it was a very different environment to nowadays. I remember walking into my first industry meetings, and it was a little bit like a scene from a cowboy western. You know, the part where the hero or the villain walks through the saloon doors and everyone goes silent? Well, that is exactly what it was like the first few times. But you learn to adjust and adapt and manage these situations through experience. In 2003, I was made Managing Director of Cavania Group UK, one of the Cavania Group companies, and I was the first female appointed to the position of Managing Director within the group. And in 2016, when I retired, I was still the only female to hold that position. Concurrently, in 2003, I joined the Board of Directors of the UK LP Gas Association. I was the only female on the board until 2006. And when in 2012, I was appointed as chairman of the board, the first woman to hold that position in the history of the association, the female board representation was then at 40%. And whilst I enjoyed the challenges and successes the work and position brought me, it was often quite lonely as well. So when I was first approached by the WLPGA in 2013 about the potential of supporting a women's LPG network, I looked back at my own personal challenges and situations and thought how helpful it would have been to be able to access a secure platform of like-minded people and be able to discuss issues and get advice and support from other business executives. And that is exactly what Win LPG strives to do today. Through our membership, our knowledge exchange meetings, our webinars, our local chapters, we try to offer knowledge, feedback, support, and suggestions from the past and present experience of fantastic female and male managers and leaders. And I really hope everyone will gain some benefit from joining us today. However, everyone at some time has had to deal with at least a few difficult people and situations in the business environment. The client who curses and threatens about the job that is being done exactly as he insisted it be done. A colleague who smiles and nods but doesn't complete the work that they promised, or the boss who makes unreasonable demands about the new project that was riddled with issues from the start. And the list goes on. As a business manager, it has become part of day-to-day duties to manage challenging situations and people. And some studies suggest that 30 to 40% of a manager's daily activities are devoted to dealing with some form of interpersonal conflict. A manager's inability to effectively deal with anger and conflict in the workplace can result in large loss of productivity and adversely affect the others who work there. And you may consider yourself a patient and tolerant person, but when you encounter difficult work situations or colleague personalities who annoy or frustrate you, it can be challenging and stressful. The key to communicating and working with difficult people is to focus on the things you have 100% of control over, your reaction to them. You have to change how you react to people before you can change how you interact with them. Listening is an art by which we use empathy to reach across the space between us. Passive attention in these situations doesn't work. Listening is an active process. To listen, you must hold back on what you have to say and control the urge to interrupt or argue. The art of listening is never easy, especially when we are too concerned with instructing the other person, which means we are not able to truly be open to their point of view. But any time you demonstrate a willingness to listen with the minimum of defensiveness, criticism, or impatience, you are giving the gift of understanding and earning the right to have it reciprocated. Suspending your needs long enough to hear the other person out is part of being able to listen. But suspending your needs is not the same as becoming non-self. Listening well is often silent, but never passive. And a good way to promote understanding is to take time to restate the other person's position in your own words, and then ask them to correct or affirm your understanding of their thoughts and feelings. This means that the other person has no doubt that you grasp their position, they will feel understood, and they will then be more open to hearing from you. Having said that, it's also important to consider how much interaction you have with that person. Is it really worth ruffling feathers if you only see them once a month? If working with them is not an essential part of your job, then no one would blame you for just ignoring it and putting up with their quirks. Difficult behavior and situations are part and parcel of almost every job. And whilst there are certainly some people who are more difficult than others, I always think it's helpful to have a few go-to strategies for challenging times. And I think the first thing you have to emphasize is the need to look inward first. It's important to remember that each one of us can be very difficult at times, and to look carefully at what we may be doing or not doing to contribute to the immediate problem. A quotation from a psychologist, Jeffrey Cotter, sums this up for me. He says, "Every person you fight with has many other people in their life with whom they get along quite well. You cannot look at a person who seems difficult to you without also looking at yourself." So some really quick suggestions for dealing with difficult behavior. It's important to deal with these situations that you stay in control of your own immediate reactions. If you struggle with this, take a deep breath. And if that's not enough time to gather your thoughts and emotions, you may need to walk away. Say you have another appointment, but as soon as possible, you will revisit the issue with them. This allows time for emotion to disperse, and so you can discuss again when you're both calm. You always have control over your own behavior. Consider what you could have done differently to avoid this situation or manage it better. Always try to listen, to understand the other person's intentions. It's unlikely that anyone is being difficult just for the fun of it, but if you can determine what really drives the behavior, it will be a big help in reaching a satisfactory solution. Without bad-mouthing, share your story and get the advice of someone you trust. The old adage of a problem shared is a problem halved is true. And whilst it may be tempting to get confirmation that you're not the only person who struggles with this behavior, this individual, this behavior doesn't help you move past the moment, and it will only keep you mired in negativity. Sharing your intentions, enthusiasm, or concerns can sometimes help another person better understand your needs and the impact of their own actions. And it can also help motivate them to share or suggest alternatives. The relationships we build with other people are invaluable to helping us get things done at work. So get to know people personally. And even when you disagree, do so with civility. Let the other person know that you may disagree, but you recognize and value their expertise and opinions. But if the damage has been done, don't rehash. Instead, think and discuss your ideas on how to move forward. In summary, conflict is a normal and natural consequence of interaction with one another. The cost of resolving conflict is negligible relative to the cost of leaving conflicts unresolved. We all have moments when we are not at our best. Learning to smoothly handle the times when your colleagues, clients, or customers become contrary will make you less frustrated and stressed. Working with difficult situations is never easy. If you're struggling, take time out to consider the situation carefully and objectively. Sometimes a heart-to-heart conversation is the right choice. Sometimes a more roundabout approach might be better. And sometimes, if you can't seem to get through to them no matter what you do, or if you don't interact with the person often, it might be best just to use some humor and laugh it off, or let it roll off your back and walk away. But whatever you do, the very best of luck. Thank you. And I think over to Andre.
Thank you, Nikki. Great presentation. And what a great session we are having here today. And it's not over. I would like to take this opportunity to announce that we will be opening in June the Woman of the Year and Young Woman of the Year awards for 2022. If you would like to apply or to propose someone, please do. This is a great way to recognize great leaders in our industry. And even if you have applied in the past, we encourage you to reapply or repropose someone else that you have proposed previously. And what a better timing than to congratulate the 2021 winners. And starting with Woman of the Year, Tamriel Zettucci from Ferrari that is here with us today, and Karen Navas from Consigas as runner-up. And on the Younger Women of the Years, we have Daria Natuzayeva from Flowgas GB and Annalisa Vario from Ultragas. So this pretty much wraps our session today. Thank you so much for participating and for being here with us. This was a super powerful and inspirational session. I hope you have enjoyed and felt the same way. I want to thank you all for being with us today and for your interest in LPG Talks live webinars, and of course, for women in LPG and leadership. Also, a very special thank you to Alison, Blaise, Paula, Tamriel, Kanu, Morgan, Nikki, and Michael for being here with us today. In case you want to share this session with your colleagues, I'm happy to inform you that this session was recorded and will be available for you to share. We're launching the normal exit poll, so stay tuned and provide us your feedback. We are always looking to improve. Thank you and looking forward to seeing you in the next webinar of LPG Talks Live. Stay safe.